It's passing you by, like a movie you've seen before, like a road you've driven 1,000 times. Life. It's happening to you instead of you happening to it. Now you can stay in the back seat of your very own life. You can be a passenger, letting something else dictate where you're supposed to go. Or you can jump in the driver's seat and pedal down, find a new road with some new terrain, because your life, it's all yours for the taking. But you've got to find it. You've got to go get it. You've got to own it.
Well, man, I'm real excited to jump into week 1 of Own It, a brand new series that we're starting today. And really, this is a series that we're starting today for any of us who are not content to just let life happen to us, but rather we want to kind of set the course for our life. We know who we want to be. We know the kind of life that we want, and we want to make choices consistent with that to lead us towards that. And so that's what we're going to be talking about over the next several weeks. How many of you guys have traveled this summer, by the way? Have you guys traveled, no matter where you're at right now? Just raise your hand real quick. All right, lots of you. So my wife, we've traveled several times this summer, and my wife's family, Jenny's family, is from Georgia, the Savannah area, and so every summer, pretty much every summer, we travel down there, and so we have mastered the art of driving I-95. I'm kind of ashamed to say that because no one should be forced into that, but we've mastered that art. So we know exactly where to stop. We've got that trip down to like 10 hours and 12 minutes. We bring giant cups because that's our bathroom breaks for the kids. I mean, just whatever, don't judge, you do it too. Just truth. We've got this thing nailed. And so as I was driving a couple of weeks ago, we're driving down to Georgia, we're about 4 hours into the trip. And it strikes me, one of the greatest inventions, I think, for any of us who've ever had to travel or drive long distances, one of the greatest technological inventions of the automobile that they've added to the automobile in the last couple of decades is cruise control. Man, thank you. Someone's clapping. All right. Cruise control is amazing. I mean, it's taking all the thinking out of driving, pretty much. I just set the speedometer, I set the speed at what I want to go, and then I don't even have to really think about it. And I realized that I had been on cruise control for about an hour. I was in Virginia at this point, and I don't know if have you ever driven and then you've gone somewhere and time has gone by and then it strikes you like, I don't even know where I'm at right now. Like, what is happening? Where, am I in Montana? I don't know. Well, that's kind of the place that I was at. I had cruise control on for about an hour, and when you're on cruise control and you just got your hand on the steering wheel, all the scenery's passing, it's just kind of like mundane. You're not even thinking anymore. I was completely zoned out. I didn't even know where I was. And then all of a sudden, something happened. I'm about 15 feet away from passing this 18-wheeler. It's a 3-lane highway at this point. There's an 18-wheeler in the middle lane. I'm in the far left passing lane, and I'm about 15 feet away from it. And as I'm about to pass this truck, I notice that something happens on the back tires, the back wheels. Now, I don't know much about cars, so I don't even know what this is called, but here's what I know happened. That right there came off the truck. And it looked like it was probably a 65, 75-pound piece of metal that just flew off this truck. And it's bouncing down the highway now, and it's throwing, shrapnel all over the place. Metal, and had our vehicle obviously been right next to that truck, it would have smashed right into our vehicle. And now, because this little end cap unit on the axle, whatever that thing is not there anymore, the tires have nothing holding them in place. So the 2 tires drift off the truck. And now you've got 2 tires, big rig tires that are going down the Interstate 95 at 75 miles per hour. And honestly, by the grace of God, and if you've ever driven I-95, you know this is true, like seriously by the grace of God, because I-95 between Washington and Richmond can be a parking lot. There was no one, we weren't to the left, and there was no one to the right. And those 2 tires just kind of drifted off to the right and went off into the woods. And no one was hurt. Now, you know how I navigated my way through all that, right? I just kept it on cruise control, man. I just cruise control. No, man, I didn't do that. You know exactly what I did. I hit the brakes. I swerved. I sped up. I sat up straight, my posture changed, everything, my attention changed. Suddenly, I knew exactly where I was. Suddenly, my posture's different. I got 10 and 2 on the wheel right now, right? Everything changed in that moment because of this impending, what could have been a disaster. I love cruise control on a car. But man, let me tell you, I have hated the seasons of my life that I felt like my life was on cruise control. And I don't know if you've ever felt that way. Have you ever felt like life for you is a bit on cruise control? Like you're moving forward, and you know that because the calendar is advancing, but you feel like you're no different. All the scenery's just kind of passing you by. It's all become a little bit mundane. You've kind of checked out. It's like a year has gone by, and you're no different than you were a year ago because what? You just cruise control. And here's the problem. What's scary is that oftentimes the thing that jolts us out of cruise control in life is an impending disaster. It's where something begins to fall apart. And sometimes we can catch it before it all happens. We go, man, what has happened? I need to take ownership back over the wheel here. I need to get in control of what's happening in my life because I want to avoid what's coming. And then what's tragic is when the wreck of our life happens. And that's when you find yourself maybe in a moment in your life when you look in the mirror, you wake up and you look in the mirror and you're like, how did I get here? You don't even realize it. Why? Because you've been on cruise control. You look in the mirror and you're like, how did my marriage end up here? How did my relationship with my kids end up here? How did my relationship with my parents end up here? How did my career end up here? And the answer is, you haven't been owning it. You've just been kind of cruising through. And so look, let me just tell you the burden of this series and our hope for this series is we don't want it to be an impending wreck in your life to be the thing that jolts you up from reality, saying, I got to own my life. We don't want that to be the reason you sit up straight and your posture changes and you go, I got to own my life. We don't want that to be the thing that does it. That you can make decisions ahead of that. You can make decisions now to get ahead of that, to say, man, I'm going to own my life. I'm not just going to let life happen to me. And so in the next several weeks, we're going to look at 4 kind of key areas that if you're going to own your life, you've got to pay attention to these four areas. They're critical. And so the first one we want to start with today is really simple. If you want to own your life, you've got to start by looking at the people who are closest to you. You got to evaluate your friendships. You got to look at relationships. So we're going to talk today about what it means to own our friendships, to own the relationships with people closest to you. Let me just tell you as a church real quick, we are absolutely committed to helping you develop relationships and friendships that are thriving. Our heart for you is that you have remarkable relationships in your life, remarkable friendships. And so even, with that said, let me just tell you real quick, as a church, we've been exploring how we can do that better. We've been exploring about what it could look like for us as a church to come alongside you in even better ways to help you develop relationships that are absolutely thriving. And so one of the things we want to do to kind of help with that, and I'm going to ask you to do something we never, ever, 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 ever ask you to do, but I'm going to ask you to do it today. And just love for you to take me up on this. And so I actually love for you to pull out your mobile device real quick. Everybody pull out your mobile device. No matter what location you're at, everybody pull it. Lots of you are reaching down right now. That's good. That means you silenced it and put it away. Nice. All right. Pull out your mobile device wherever you're at right now. If you're watching online, grab your mobile device, whatever you need to do. And what I'm going to ask you to do on that mobile device real quick is I would love for you to give us some feedback. I would love for you to answer just a couple of questions on a very, very quick survey. Again, we never asked you to do this, but I'm going to ask you to do this. And the reason why I'm going to ask you to do this is because this survey will help us as a church know better how we can partner with you in helping you to continue to develop and thriving relationships. And so a couple things about it. It's just a couple of questions. It takes a friend of mine took it, and it took them 45 seconds. So seriously, it's very, 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 very simple. If you're a conspiracy theorist, just know you don't need to give us your name. We're not getting any information from you or anything. So if you see the name part, if you want to skip that, just skip it. We don't need your name. That's fine. Skip that part if you don't want us to have your name. That's fine. But just take the survey. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you 90 seconds. Here's how it works. You can see on the screen right here. Best way to do it, easiest way to do it is actually if you have the LCBC app, just open that up, and down at the bottom you see a little tab that says survey. Click on that. Take it really, really quick. If you don't have the LCBC app, that's no problem. You can text single. If you are single, text single to 90888. If you're engaged, text engaged to 90888. And if you don't know how to spell these words, they're on the screen. And then if you're married, type married to 90888. 90 seconds starts now. right, about 30 seconds. All right, good? See, that wasn't painful. You did it. Now, let me tell you real quick, again, that's gonna help us as a church. We just wanna know how to better partner with you in the days ahead and when it comes to helping you develop and thriving relationships in all areas of your life. And let me just tell you real quick, kind of why we have to talk about friendships today. If we're gonna start this series by talking about owning our life and owning particularly the friends that we have, why we have to talk about this. And it comes down to a really, really simple, big idea that's this. You've experienced this. Our friends determine the quality and direction of our life. That's sort of the fundamental principle of today. Our friends determine the quality and direction of our life. Now, you know this to be true because you've experienced this at some level in your life. How many of you could tell me stories, you could tell stories about friends that you have that all you just need to be in their presence for 5 minutes and you feel more creative, you feel more inspired, you feel more hope. Your faith is emboldened. There's something about being in their presence that just brings you to life, right? They improve the quality of your life and the direction of your life. And then on the other side, how many of us could tell stories about people, friends of ours, friends who were friends of ours at the time, that may be tied to some of our deepest regrets? In fact, if I were to ask some of you, and I know this because some of you have shared these kinds of stories, for some of you, the deepest regrets that you have in your life, if you were to take a snapshot of that moment of your deepest regret and you would show me that snapshot, there's a person in that picture with you. There's a friend, there's a group of friends in that picture with you. And they led you down a direction that you thought maybe you would never go. And in fact, some of you would even say that some of the biggest regrets in your life revolve around friends and a person. And you would even say like, man, if I had to do anything over in my life, I wish I would have never met them. I wish I wouldn't have met him. I wish I wouldn't have met her, whatever it might be. And that's because you've experienced this, that our friends determine the quality and direction of our life. And we drift into regret with some of these decisions because of the friends that we have. And we don't do it intentionally. It's not like we set out to do those things. We set out to live or make those decisions that are going to bring regret with our friends. We just kind of drift into them, and that's the problem. We just cruise control our way into our friendships. We just let friendships happen to us instead of taking ownership of them and choosing our friends. We just end up developing relationships with people because it's just the easiest thing. We just grew up with them. We just sit in the cubicle next to them, wherever it might be. And that's all great, I guess, but that's a horrible way to choose who's going to be closest to you because there's no intentionality behind that. Now, there was a guy in the scriptures. His name was Solomon. He was a king, and he wrote this vast collection of wisdom sayings in the Old Testament. Wrote several books in the Old Testament, and one of them is the book of Proverbs. It's just this collection of wise statements that Solomon wrote, and he speaks into this very issue. And Solomon, in this one passage, I just love it, man. It's so simple, it's so practical. He explains and unpacks why it is so dangerous to just cruise control our way into friendships without being intentional about them, without owning them. This is what he says. This is great. Walk with the wise. This is in Proverbs chapter 13, verse 20. It says, walk with the wise and become what? Wise. Associate with fools and get into trouble. Now, I love this. This is an absolutely remarkable statement. Because think about what Solomon is saying here for a second. Solomon is saying that wisdom is contagious. You can catch it. You just have to put yourself around wise people, and it will begin to affect you. Wisdom's contagious. And on the other side, he says, associate with fools and get in trouble. No, isn't it interesting, by the way? He says, walk with the wise and you'll become wise. But he doesn't say, associate with fools and you'll become a fool. He says, associate with fools and you'll get into trouble. It's almost like Solomon's way of saying, look, if you're hanging out with people who do not want to pursue godliness, who don't want to pursue what God has for their life, if you're hanging out with people who are going to make destructive choices, you don't even need to make those same choices. You'll be associated with them. You'll get the shrapnel of their stupidity onto you, and it will affect you just by being in their presence. And think about this for a second, guys. If this is true, because this really what Solomon's doing here, Solomon is just illustrating a principle that your mama told you when you were in middle school and high school, and you rolled your eyes at her when she told you this, and some of you are in high school right now, and you roll your eyes when your parents probably talked to you about this, but it's this principle that someone told you somewhere along in your life, and it's this: you become like the people you hang with. That's just a truth. That's a fundamental truth. You become like the people you hang with. And he's illustrating this principle. And if that's true, then I just want you to think about this for a second. If it's true that we become like the people we hang with, then think about what hangs in the balance with that idea. If that's true, that means that the greatest predictor of your future, of who you will be, the kind of person you will be a year from now, the greatest predictor of that may not be your circumstances. That has influence, but that might not be the greatest predictor of who you'll be a year from now. And the greatest predictor of who you'll be a year from now or your future may not be your socioeconomic strata that you're in. That will influence it, but that might not be the greatest predictor of who you'll be a year from now. If this is true, that means the greatest predictor of who you will be 1 year from now are your friends. What are they like? Because you're going to be like that. What do they value? Because you're going to value those things. What do they do? Because you're going to do those things. What are their attitudes? Because you're going to have those same attitudes. And this is way, way, way more than just folksy wisdom from 3,000 years ago that Solomon is giving us here. I came across some research this last week. It's by Morin Cerf. And Morin Cerf is a neuroscientist from Northwestern University. And Morin Cerf has dedicated his life in the neuroscience field to particularly studying decision-making, how we make decisions. And Morin Cerf and his team conducted this study a few years ago. It was a fascinating study, and they brought these people in together, and they had them watch, they brought a group of people together, they had them watch the same thing, and then they had them talk about some of the same things, and all the time they're monitoring their brain waves. And what they discovered really quickly is that as soon as these people got in the same space together, their brain waves began to sync up. In other words, they began to think like each other just by being in the same room. Now, I want you to think about what that means. Just look around you right now. Like, you're sharing the brain waves with the people around. Like, seriously, look around you. That's scary. And the fact that you just laughed, by the way, proves the point. Like, we're all thinking a little bit the same right now. The brain waves are kind of are lining up. He goes on to say this. This is fascinating. This is Cerf's conclusion in this study. Look what he says. This is so interesting. If people want to maximize happiness and minimize stress, anybody want that? Yeah, me too. If people want to maximize happiness and minimize stress, well, what should we do? Well, they should build a life that requires fewer decisions. How? By surrounding themselves with people who embody the traits they prefer. Sounds a little bit like Solomon, doesn't it? Then he goes on to say this. This kind of sums it all up. I love this statement. Over time, this is Cerf's conclusion, they'll naturally, without almost thinking, organically, unconsciously almost, like just naturally, like it's going to happen. They will naturally pick up those desirable attitudes and behaviors. Now that is a absolutely fascinating conclusion. Because here's what that means. Let's just consider for a second how practical the implications are of this research and of what Solomon's saying as well. Neuroscience backs up what Solomon's saying 3,000 years ago. Let's just imagine for a second, just consider how practical those implications are when it comes to spiritual growth. When it comes to our spiritual growth. Part of what this means is that if you are interested in following Jesus, if you want to follow Jesus with your life, if you've said, man, I want to step out into God's calling on my life, and you want to respond to the life that Jesus is calling you and inviting you into, that the most important thing, if that's you, the most important thing you can do may not be to go get another book about how to do that. The most important thing that you can do, the most impactful thing that you can do might not be to go and just to listen to another message, as great as they might be. The most important thing that you can do is not to go listen to another podcast. If you want to follow Jesus, what this means is that the most important thing you can do is to get around followers of Jesus. As many as you can, for as long as you can. Because if you do that, this starts to happen. Solomon says, man, walk with the wise and you'll become wise, and walk with fools and And you're going to suffer because of that. Which all this just means is that the greatest gift that you can give to yourself, because don't you want to own your life in this area? Don't you want to own the friendships you have, just not just let them happen to you, not just cruise control into them? And if so, what this all means is that the greatest gift maybe that you can give to yourself in this area is to take a really close look at who you're closest to examine it. I think a real helpful framework, if you want to do that, is I kind of think about relationships in circles, like expanding or sort of these circles here. We all have relationships that fall into one of these three categories. First one is just acquaintances. Acquaintances is the biggest circle because we have the most of those, right? Acquaintances are probably, I don't know, some people think that you can have up to about 150 acquaintances in your life. Acquaintances are people that you probably know their name, they know your name. It's the people that you work with in your division at work. It's your people at your school, your teammates, all this kind of stuff. If you're in a fraternity, it's your brothers in a fraternity. If you're in a sorority, it's your sisters in a sorority. So it's a larger group of people, and they know your name, they know some things about you, but they've probably never been in your home. You've never really been in their home. It's not like they're that close. You just know some surface level stuff about them. And so acquaintances, we all have them, right? But you move down a little bit, and then you've got personal friends. Personal friends, you probably have anywhere, you can probably have about 10 to 15 of personal friends. Personal friends, they know more than just your name. They know things about your family. They know about your history. They know about your background. In fact, they may be some family members because you've grown up with them and you've known them for a long time. These are people who've been in your home. You've been in their home. You've shared life with them. You've got a little bit invested into them. They have some things invested into you. They can speak into your life in a way that's relevant because they know you. That's personal friends. And then the closest, the tightest circle is just your close friends. This is probably 1 to 4 people in your life. These are the people who know your struggles, not because you've told them, because they've seen them, because they're that close to you. They know your doubts. They know your victories. They can speak truth into your life. They can hold you accountable. You've told them things that maybe you haven't told anyone else. You've experienced things with them you haven't experienced with anyone else. They know your dreams. So these are our close friends. And I just want you to consider something for a second. If friendships determine the quality and direction of our lives, then we have to evaluate who is in these circles, particularly these 2 inner circles. Because these 2 inner circles are influencing us, and we will become like the people we hang with. We have to evaluate them. And for you and for me, owning our life in this way, in the area of our friendships, owning our life may mean that we need to move some people into different circles. There may be some people here that we need to move into the acquaintance circle. And there may be some people in the acquaintance circle you need to move closer. Because it's affecting the quality and direction of your life. And I already know for some of you the objection that you have, because I know this because I've talked to some of you about this before, and you throw out the same objection every time. And the objection is this: Jace, if we're going to talk about moving people and moving some of these people that I used to be close with or personal, yeah, I know they're not the best people, but I don't know. I don't want to ditch them. I don't want to do all that. So this feels really judgmental, Jason. Like, who am I to judge? Like, this feels really judgy. Let me just explain something real quick. There's a huge, monumental difference between judging someone and using good judgment. 2 very different things. Judging someone is when you look at someone else's life and you tell them how they should be living. You tell them that they're off and that they need to do this and they need to live this way. That's judging someone. You stand as a what? A judge over their life. You tell someone how they should be living. Using good judgment is taking ownership for how you're living. Using good judgment is not telling someone else how they should live. It's saying, I'm going to own how I live. I'm going to set my course. I'm going to determine the kind of person that God has called me to be, and I'm going to go there, and I'm going to make decisions consistent with who God has invited me to be. I'm going to own that part of my life. And that may mean that there are some people here, you're not judging them. You're not telling them you shouldn't live that way. No, they can live whatever way they want. They can do whatever they want. You're not judging them. You're just saying you're going to live that way. You got to be here. Because I'm not walking that direction anymore. Listen, there's some of you here today, and you are compelled by following Jesus. Anytime you talk about and you've experienced and you hear about the love and the grace of God that has been poured out for you in Jesus Christ, something about you, your heart beats a little bit faster. You find yourself inspired. You find yourself compelled to follow Jesus. And yet, as compelled as you feel, as inspired as you feel, as desirous as you feel to want to follow Jesus, to respond to the love of God, something has you stuck. You're sitting there going, I don't know if I can move forward. I just want to suggest for some of you, the reason you are stuck in following through and following Jesus is because of the people who are in these circles right here. Because none of them want to walk the same direction that you do. So it's no wonder. Look, some of you are here today and you're struggling. You've got a secret struggle. Maybe for you it's alcohol or it's some other substance. It's an addiction. And maybe other people know about it, but maybe no one knows about it. I don't know. And you're sitting there and you're going, man, I don't know what to do with this. And let me just suggest for some of you, the thing that is holding you back from pursuing freedom, the thing that's holding you back from claiming victory over that struggle, the very first step you need to evaluate, the thing that's holding you back is the people who are in these circles because they're feeding that struggle. It's time to own your life, man. It's time to step up and say that you're not going to let your friendships who determine the quality and direction of your life hold you back from God's best for you. Which means you're going to have to evaluate this. Any place you feel stuck, you've got to ask yourself who is closest to you because they may be feeding that stuckness. And that's no way to live. And here's what I love about Solomon. Solomon doesn't just leave us because there's a lot of tension in the room right now. And Solomon doesn't just leave us with this tension of like, okay, so have fun moving people around in circles. Go. See you next week. Solomon also paints a vision, I think an incredibly beautiful vision of the kind of friends that we need to move closer into those two inner circles. So who are the kind of people we want to move closer to us? And there's another writing that Solomon has, it's the book of Ecclesiastes, and he talks about the meaning of life, and he talks a lot about friendships in this, and he paints this incredible vision of the kind of friend that we want, the kind of people that you should want, that I should want to move closer into those circles. And it almost gives us a standard, like a litmus test for who fits this, that's who I want close to me. Look what he says, this is in Ecclesiastes chapter 4. He says, 2 people are better off than one, friendship. You gotta pursue this thing. 2 people are better off than one. Why? For they can help each other succeed. In other words, Solomon's saying the kind of person you want in those 2 inner circles, personal and close to you, it's the kind of person, they know who you want to be. They know the kind of husband you want to be. They know the kind of wife you want to be. They know the kind of parent you want to be. They know the kind of student you want to be. They know who you want to be. And they help you succeed. They know you want to pursue God with your life, and they help you succeed in that. They don't pull you back. They don't discourage you from it. They push you towards it. That's who you want close. What he says next. He says, if one person falls, the other can reach out and help. But if someone who falls alone is in real trouble. The kind of people we want in those innermost circles are people that are going to reach and help. Have you ever struggled? Have you ever stumbled? Yes. And if you want to pursue God, if you want to follow Jesus with your life, I promise you, it will feel at times like it is 2 steps forward and 3 steps back. You will struggle and you will stumble and you will give into temptation. And you want people close to you who will reach down and pull you back up in that moment. And they will not condemn you and they will not shame you. They will say, let's go, get up, let's walk again. What he says next, he says, likewise, 2 people lying close together can keep each other warm. How can one person be warm alone? And I love this because the idea behind this, remember, he's writing 3,000 years ago. There were lots of shepherds and people out in the fields. And it's almost like the idea behind this is the weather changes. Circumstances change, and all of a sudden it's gotten cold. And the people we want in those 2 innermost circles are people who will keep us warm when the circumstances of our life shift, when loss hits you, when death hits your family, when the job transition happens, when failure hits, when the winter weather of circumstances sweeps over your life, someone to go, I'm here, I ain't leaving. I'm going to encourage you through this. Do you have that kind of friend? And then lastly, he says this, a person standing alone can be attacked and defeated, but two can stand back to back and conquer. Three are even better, for a triple braided cord is not easily broken. He's describing, you know the kind of people you want close to you in those two innermost circles is the people who will fight for you. They will fight for you. Hell or high water, they will lock arms with you and say, we are going after the life God has for us together. So here's the filter he gives. You kind of sum it up in 4 statements. And this is the filter. Just put this filter through the people that are in those two innermost circles in your life. First of all, the people in those circles who should be in those circles, they will never ask you to compromise a conviction. Do you have anybody in those two innermost circles that ask you to compromise a conviction? It's time to move them to the acquaintance circle. Because a friend like this will never ask you to compromise a conviction. They'll support your convictions. Second, it's the kind of people, they will tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. It's people who will call you up, call you out. People who will say, hey, wait, hold up. What you're doing is not consistent with the life of following Jesus. Come on, man, you can do better. Why would they do this? Because they want you to succeed. They'll remind you of who you are in Christ. Do you have people doing that in your life? When you struggle, when you fail, when you stumble, when you fall, when you give in, do you have someone in your life who comes along and says, that's not you, it's all right, you're forgiven? No shame with God. You can do this, let's go. Because you are God's son, you are God's daughter, you are a man of God, you are a woman of God, that's who you are. Do you have anybody reminding you of that? And last, they'll fight to see you pursue God. They'll fight for that. So who's with you in those two innermost circles? And who are you with? Who are you doing that for? Do you have someone like that in your life? And look, I just want you to know, man, as a church, we are relentlessly committed to this. We are relentlessly committed as a church to creating environments where you can develop and strengthen those kinds of friendships. You choose those kinds of friendships and you can develop and strengthen them. The kind of friendships with people who want to walk in the same direction as you. We just love hearing stories about how that's happened. In fact, I heard a story just a few weeks ago that I wanted to share with you about a group of guys kind of just said, here at our church, who just said, look, we want to walk in the same direction together. And it's just a simple story, and I want you to see it because I think it's a perfect illustration of everything we're talking about. So take a look at the screens.
Maybe not a natural thing for a bunch of guys to get together in a group. Why did you say yes to being a part of a group like this?
We were all in different stages of our faith, but we're all going through and just saying like, all right, like I don't know how to do this, but maybe if there's somebody that can show me different ways of growing closer to God.
I felt like I was reaching a plateau where I've been part of the church for 5 years. I've been actively serving for a while in Kidman, and I just felt like I wanted more to reach a closer relationship with Jesus. And I felt like I was missing that.
You can just kind of be like yourself. I like that. That felt good. Mm-hmm. Didn't feel fake at all. Felt like really felt authentic and real.
It was just good to connect with somebody else one-on-one too. I like hearing about your story and everything. There's some similarities there as far as family and stuff like that.
Commonplace in life, common people we knew. It was good to connect.
Hearing that, like it also just like freed something in me, like say like, all right, we all have a little bit of brokenness in us, but like it's okay to share it. It's okay to talk about it. It's okay to like lean on each other for that.
And before like coming to this group and like having that opportunity to share, like I was running from like spiritual accountability, kind of like I kept like small groups, things like that as a distance.
I'm just surprised how often I'm with people and still feel alone. And yet you guys were really meaningful to, like, I could show up and say what was really there. It didn't have to be anything outside of just like, all right, I'm in this too. We're trying to figure out how to grow.
For me, it definitely had, this group had a highly beneficial push for me just to be a good husband, a better father, and then to also be a better teacher.
I also really enjoyed the accountability piece like we all talked about a little bit earlier. It's just cool to have, like, we're all in this together and we're not on our own.
Having other men around me has made it easier to face the very difficult things that men go through, the things you have to face.
Now let me tell you what I love about that story. It's not an emotional story. There's not some tragedy that group is trying to get through. It's just a simple story about a group of guys who are trying to own their lives. A group of guys who are saying, man, we're gonna own it in the area of friendships. We're not just gonna let friendships happen to us, we're gonna choose them. We're gonna choose them. We're gonna set out to walk in the same direction with a group of guys who want to walk together. Let me just say this to you. Look, if the only experience you have with our church is this 1 hour that we do together on a weekend or a Monday night, if that's the only experience you have with our church, I just want you to know you are getting a limited experience with our church. You're not getting the full experience. And here's how I know that's true. Because everything those guys just talked about, accountability, encouragement, speaking into each other's lives, that can't happen here in an hour. That can only happen across a table. That can only happen in a living room. That can only happen with a cup of coffee in your hands face to face. That can only happen on a trail as you're running together. That happens life on life. I just want you to get the full experience of what God has for you. Part of what that means is owning our lives when it comes to the area of personal relationships. This is why I'm just so proud of the work that our groups team here at our church has been doing really over the last year. Because our groups team has been working hard to make sure that you finding those kinds of relationships here at our church is easier than ever. In fact, you've got some information about it in your program. It looks like this, and you don't have to pull it out right now, but I want to highly encourage you later today to take a look at this. This tells you about some of the new direction. I'll just highlight real quick. One of the things we've done is we've just made for you to get into a group, to get to know some people here that you can do life with and walk in the same direction with. We made it easier than ever. We've got online options. We've got options that are, rallied around some of your interests. If you've got a topic that you really want to dive into, if it's parenting or marriage, or maybe it's a book of the Bible, or maybe it's questions about certain things spiritually, you're going to have the opportunity to go. In a few weeks from now, we're rolling out an online directory where you can go and you can find people who have the same interests, find people who want the same things, and you'll be able to group up. We're making it easier than ever. And you're not committing your life away. It's like 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and then you can find another group, or you can keep going with that one. It doesn't matter. The point is for you to be intentional about it. It's for you to be intentional about it. And for you to say, I'm gonna own my life in this way. And so just 3 things I would ask you to do today. 3 things I ask you to do in response. First is this: evaluate your circles. Evaluate your circles. This may be one of the most important things that you do today, is to put names in those circles and then to evaluate. And that'll be one of the toughest things maybe for some of you that you do, but it's time to own it, man. It's time to own your life when it comes to friendships, to not just let them happen to you, but to choose them because you know where you want to go. Evaluate your circles. Examine where you want to grow. In other words, find an area in your life that you want to grow. Find an area of your life that you say, man, I want God to speak into this area of my life. It might be work, it might be parenting, it might be marriage, whatever. I don't know. Maybe it's studying the Bible. I don't know. Examine an area where you want to grow and then go online to our online directory and explore your options. Find a group. Own it. Find a group. By the end of the day today, go to our website, click on the groups tab, and sign up to get registered for the online directory when it comes out, when we roll it out at the end of this month. Own it. For some of you, this will be the most important thing you do in a long time right here. Why? Because our friends determine the quality and direction of our lives. And if you own it here with friendships, if you start here by owning your life in the area of your friendships, it will change everything about the way you respond to God. And that is exactly where we will pick up next week for week 2 of Own It. Have a great week. See you next week.